I work with founders on live deals, usually when there's buyer's interest, but deals are not moving. So that's the gap I want to talk about today. Not how to pitch every feature, not how to become a traditional salesperson, not how to force urgency where none exists. This is about something a little more practical. How deals actually get approved when more than one person has to believe that change is worth it. That applies whether you're selling to an SMB, mid-market, enterprise, partners, organizers, firms, investors, operators. Some of you are building AI. Some are building trust products, blockchain, behavioral apps, tools that change how people work. The categories are different. The approval problem is similar. AI is the loudest example right now. When every founder is here selling some sort of a change, trust, behavior, workflow, monetization, automation, the products are going to get attention. It's the business case that gets approval. It's the hole, not the shovel. Your job is to make the decision easier, safer, and easier to defend. So this is the point I want you to remember. Interest is not a decision. A buyer can love what you're building and still be nowhere near approval, nowhere near a decision. They can ask for pricing, they can ask for a pilot, they can request features. They can say, this is exactly what we need. They can introduce you internally, and all of that can be real, but it doesn't mean the company, the partner, the stakeholder is ready to fund the change or own the decision to change. Founders often mistake enthusiasm for momentum. That's especially dangerous in categories that create curiosity quickly. AI, blockchain, right? A lot of stuff is 100% buzzword compliant, but there's a lot of it out there. Dating, behavior change, career tools, anything that feels new. Curiosity is going to get the meetings, but it's going to be the outcomes, increased revenue, reduced costs, reduced risk that get funded. So the question isn't, did they like it? The better question is, can they get this approved when I'm not in the room? It's very natural for you as a founder to want to sell your product. That makes sense. You built it, you know the features, the workflows, integrations, the roadmap, the differentiation between anybody else. And product matters. This isn't an argument against product. But decision makers don't approve products because they're interesting. They approve business outcomes, risk reduction, strategic value, credible adoption. Nobody wants to buy more shelfware. So a product conversation sounds like, here's what it does, here's how it works, here's why it's better, here's what it integrates with. An approval conversation sounds like, what revenue is protected or created, what cost comes out, what risk goes down, how fast can we show value, who is going to adopt it, who has to adopt it, how do we make the cost of inaction more expensive than change. For this room, that might mean secure AI adoption, trust and safety in a real world dating environment, organizer value in ticketing, faster marketing execution, reduced unbillable hours, or better job search outcomes. Different products, same approval question. Who believes this matters enough to act now? A user may say, this is going to save my time or my team time. That's useful, but it may not be enough to get funded. And if discovery shows the team is losing real time every week, the executive version might sound more like, this appears to remove meaningful manual work, reduce missed handoffs, and potentially help us delay or avoid adding capacity. It's the same product, Very different internal business case. The founder's job is to connect the two. This is where the real sale happens. After your call, your meeting, your buyer may need to explain the opportunity to a founder, department head, finance, technical owners, security, procurement, operators, investors, partners. There's a lot of people involved. In enterprise, that may be a formal buying committee or three security committees, AI committees, compliance committees. In SMB, it may be the owner, the CEO, the CFO, head of operations, and the person who has to live with the implementation. In consumer or marketplace models, it may be the users, partners, investors, regulators, or ecosystem participants. Either way, the decision has to survive conversations you're not a part of. You're not going to be in every room. So here's the problem: your supporter, your champion, usually won't explain it as well as you do. They don't buy your stuff as much as you sell it. They may not remember every proof point. They may not know how to defend the budget. They may not know how to answer risk questions. They may not know who's going to own the final decision. So when a founder tells me my champion is excited, I usually ask, excited enough to sell this internally? And have we equipped them? Because that's the bar. A champion is not just someone who likes you. A real champion is someone who, with influence, who will spend political capital to get the decision formed and help it move. Your job is to equip that person with a clearer internal argument. Now, I'm showing a diagram here. Wouldn't it be nice if that was the real world? It's not. You don't need to read every part of this graphic, but notice one thing. The buyer's internal path is a whole lot messier than anybody's CRM sales stages suggest. So from the founder's standpoint, the path often looks like good call, proposal, pricing, decision. But inside your company, inside your client's company, it may look more like, is this urgent? Do we have budget? Who's going to own it? Do we already have tools to do this? Will this create implementation risk? What does finance think? Can we wait a quarter? Are there cheaper options? What else is competing for attention and funding? The objection may be build versus buy, trust, safety, monetization, adoption, regulatory risk, or whether the behavior change is realistic. The form changes. The approval burden doesn't. Deals move when the decision becomes clear enough to fund and safe enough to approve. When a deal goes quiet, founders often assume that the buyer is busy. Sometimes they are. But silence usually means something is unresolved. There may not be a decision owner yet. We may not have presented a strong enough business case. There's unclear urgency. There's competing priorities. There's risk with implementations. There's procurement friction. A champion without enough influence. That's why just checking in emails rarely work. They don't solve the real problem. So if a buyer is stuck internally, asking for an update doesn't create movement. It actually teaches your contact that it's safe to ignore you. They don't get an electric shock every time that you send a note following up and they don't respond. A better move is to diagnose what's missing. Is there a named owner yet for the decision? Is there a business problem expensing enough to fund? Is there a date that matters? Is there a consequence if nothing changes? Is there a clear adoption path, a go live plan? Does the champion know how to explain this internally? And for AI, this question might be, Is this a business priority, or are they just curious about AI for ticketing, for trust, behavior change, consumer adoption? The wording changes, the decision question doesn't. What internal decision hasn't been made yet? This is one of the biggest lessons in founder-led sales. The people who find you are rarely the people who fund you. The first supporter may be a user, an operator, a director, a technical evaluator, department lead, a functional leader. They may care deeply about the problem, but they may not own the budget, the rollout, the adoption risk, or the final yes. I've sold $100 million plus to General Motors. I can promise you, I've never met with the CEO of GM. I've worked with countless champions that I've had to equip. And that's your job, to equip them to carry the case forward in rooms that you are not. So a strong champion business case works three ways. Emotionally, it makes change feel safer than staying put. Operationally, it shows that there's a realistic path to adoption. Financially, it connects the decision to revenue, cost, speed, capacity, or leakage. If your champion can only say, we like the product, well, that's weak. If your champion can say, this is going to help us reduce manual work, avoid delays, protect revenue, and go live with clear owners, that's strong. For AI, the champion may need to answer security, governance, accuracy, adoption, and build versus buy questions. Not to mention the fact that there's going to be scores of people internally and externally all selling AI, and it's going to get really confusing. You're not just selling software, AI, blockchain, an app, or a platform. You're giving your champion language that they can use inside their world, in their vernacular, in rooms that you're not. That's how supporters get advocates. So there's 4 conditions that I look for before I believe that a deal is real. First, the cost of inaction has to become more expensive than change. If nothing bad happens when they wait, it's only natural for them to wait. The cost of inaction usually comes from 4 places: lost revenue, wasted labor, avoidable risk, delayed execution. Your job is not to invent the number. Your job is to help the buyer estimate which one is real. For AI companies, the cost of inaction cannot be you'll fail behind or you'll fall behind on AI. That's too vague. It has to connect to something measurable: slower execution, higher service costs, missed revenue, manual work, compliance exposure, poor customer experience, delayed decisions. For a behavior app, it has to be unbillable hours. For ticketing, it may be resale leakage. For marketing, it may be production cycle time. For a trust product, it may be missed adoption because the risk feels too high. Second, an executive or decision owner has to be identified. Not somebody who likes it, but somebody who can fund it, approve it, adopt it, sponsor it, defend it, and force the organization to move. Third, the buyer needs a business case worth funding. That doesn't always mean a perfect ROI model, but the business reason has to be clear enough for leadership, finance, partners, investors, or operators to understand. And then lastly, there has to be a go live plan with actions, owners, dates, dependencies. Senior executives need a throat to choke if this fails. They need adoption. They don't just approve potential value. They approve value they believe can actually be realized. So when you're qualifying a deal, Don't only ask whether they're interested. Ask, is the pain expensive? Is the owner clear? Is the business case fundable? Is the path to value believable? And if one of those is missing, the deal isn't as strong as you believe. Let me just wrap this up. This is the practical tool I would encourage you to use for every meaningful buyer conversation. You can take a snapshot of this, but we're going to send it out. After your call, ask yourself 5 questions. Number 1, who actually owns the decision? Not who joined the call, not who likes the product, who owns the decision to change? Number 2, what problem is expensive enough to fund? If you can't name an expensive problem, you're probably selling preference, not priority. 3, what happens if nothing changes? That's where urgency comes from. And then 4, who could stop this internally? Budget, legal, security, procurement, another vendor, implementation, competing priorities, politics, risk. These are blind spots. I talk with my clients all the time, my founders, that you have to uncover before they become blockers. And depending upon what you're building, adds category specific risks: security, data access, governance, model accuracy, trust, safety, regulatory risk. Then lastly, can the champion explain this clearly to leadership? If the answer is no, your next job is not to send them another product deck, an ROI analysis, an analyst thing. Your next job is to help them explain why change, why now, why this, what doing nothing cost, what approval is needed. That's the champion brief. It doesn't have to be long. After your next serious buyer call, just don't send pricing. Send a short note that they can forward internally, and it should cover 5 things. Why change? Why now? Why us? Cost of doing nothing. Approval needed. If they can't forward it, they probably can't get it approved. So I'm going to leave you with this. Your job as a founder isn't just to create interest. It's to make the decision easier, safer, easier to defend. That applies whether you're selling to SMB, mid-market, enterprise. The number of stakeholders may change, but the principle doesn't. Someone has to believe the problem matters. Someone has to own the decision. Someone has to justify the spend. Someone has to believe implementation is realistic. Someone has to decide this beats other capital intensive priorities. Your sales process helps to help the buyer answer. Why should we change? Why now? Why this company? What happens if we wait? Who owns it? How will we implement it? What decision are we asking for? AI may get, attention faster, but approval still comes from trust, business impact, risk control, and a champion who can explain the case when you're not there. Same is true across this room. Trust gets tested. Behavior change gets tested. Monetization gets tested. Adoption gets tested. Risk gets tested. When founders get this right, deals become more real. Because now the champion isn't just interested, they're equipped. And equipped champions are what turn founder-led conversations into approved decisions.